This podcast is part of the Pull Up a Chair podcast network. Let's build community through connection, conversation, and collaboration.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show.
Hi, I'm Jake.
And I'm V,
And you're listening to the It's Working podcast.
where we take deep dives into mental health, breaking stigmas, and starting conversations.
Oh, you know, I try to find a purpose in my life to drive me, to guide me. Oh, doctor, I feel dead inside.
We are not healthcare professionals, and our opinions should not be taken as facts or as medical advice. To see any sources, resources, or study we speak about in this podcast, please check out our website, linked in the description of this podcast. If you or a loved one is struggling, there is hope and there is help. Some helpful resources can be found on our website, linked in the description of this podcast. It's Working Podcast is a production from the Pull Up a Chair Foundation. All opinions in this podcast belong to our hosts and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Pull Up a Chair Foundation. All right, guys, we are back with part 2. We are literally recording it right after part 1.
Mm-hmm.
You said you had more you wanted to say, Jake?
I did, yeah. So a little bit of a recap, right? The Church of Foxiness, run by head pastor Mick Jagger, really sort of steered me wrong early on in a very impressionable age where I was more or less still trying to figure out what religion was. Prior to coming to this church, we were non-denominational, and I still to this day cannot tell you what non-denominational really stands for.
Non-denominational means that you don't subscribe to one particular denomination of a church. And most religions, not just Christianity, have a wide variety of sects. You see that often with different types of Hindu, Buddhism, Judaism, and of course, America's favorite, apparently, Christianity.
Well, thank you for that. I
studied religion. I studied religion deeply.
No, I spent like 7 years of my life at the church, and I couldn't tell you like what we really stood for. We sang songs. Oh my God, did we even take communion? I don't know that we took communion. I think communion was something that I discovered when I went to the Church of Foxiness.
Well, see, that narrows it down quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay.
The process of communion. Fun side note, some sects of Christianity say that is blasphemy because it's worshiping false idols.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There's some sects of Christianity that you shouldn't have like statues of the of Jesus or Mary or the cross because you shouldn't have idols. Literally in the book, you shouldn't have idols.
Right.
Neither here or there.
Mm-hmm.
I talked today. We've been talking too long.
It's been a while, but right. So to go back to it, the situation was, not great. It wasn't ideal. Certainly, yeah. I hope there aren't many who experience exactly that. But like, I say that to say, like, whatever walk of life that any of our listeners might have like encountered when it comes to like religious trauma, I wanted to share this story to say that,
part 1 was religious trauma. It exists. We can talk about it. This episode is religious trauma. It exists. Now heal from it.
Yeah, basically. I wanted to talk about the following years after that church that would then put me on a path of like discovery and now where I am in my faith. After that church, I would find a group of missionaries that were going to Baja to build houses for women escaping abusive situations, and then also families that did not have a home. And the first house that I would go down to Baja and build was a life-changing experience. Growing up, I didn't learn Spanish, and I knew nothing about like my cultural heritage, being half Mexican, but there was just something about being there and like building a house and being around the people that was just like so like rejuvenating to like my soul. I couldn't even explain it. Like the final day we were there, I remember sitting in the back of the truck looking at the sunset and just being like, I could spend the rest of my life. I could never go back to my old life, I could just stay here forever and I'd be fine. Like, I almost wanted to not get back on the van and go back to the United States. I wanted to stay there for like ever and just build houses.
Boy, your Spanish would be so good.
I know, right? It got pretty good. Like as the years went on, or not years because it was only 2 years I was there, but as the trips went and I was there more often, I started developing relationships with some of the community members at the place that we were doing most of our work in. Vicente Guerrero. It's like in Ensenada, I believe, but it's like this little valley sort of tucked away. It's basically one road, and on either side of the road you have storefronts and like shops and stuff, and then past that is just desert. Like there's like hardly anything past that until you get to the residentials, which the residentials are pretty rough because people build houses out of whatever they can find. Yeah. Garage door insulation, like old fencing, like, you know, wooden planks, pallets, like whatever they could stack on top of the other to make a shelter. Not even a house, but a shelter. And if you were lucky, you found something you could use as a door. We would go down there and we would build like these, like, you know, like if you ever been out front of like a hardware store, like a Home Depot or Lowe's, like they sell like the sheds, right? That have like the windows and stuff like that. We would build something like that, but like slightly bigger that could accommodate like a small family of like 5 at max. We would build beds, shelving sometimes, like a very like husk of a home. But the cool part was every time that I went back and we could go and visit the house that we built last time, you would get to see how this family made that shell a real home. They would hang clotheslines from like the roofing. They would like, you know, make driveways, make fences, put new paint like these, like one house that I remembered had, they painted like these like beautiful flowers on like the, door frame to their house. Almost like, the art style that Disney uses to represent like Coco. Yeah. A lot, like akin to that. Like it was just gorgeous. And it was just their door frame. But there was like something that they added that was like a little bit more of like a homey touch to it that they did, and that part was cool. However, as cool as that was, the leadership that I was running that missionary group was very similar to Mick Jagger. But this time, listeners, I was ready for that. As soon as I started to identify that my friends who I had started working with were leaving and leaving rapidly, I then started to figure out my exit strategy.
You saw the flag this time.
I saw the flag this time. When we weren't in Mexico, we were doing peer work back in the States. So we were going into classrooms and we were serving the community. Again, it was hard to leave that behind, but I left breadcrumbs for my students to come and find me. Okay. I started a D&D group in which, you know, some of my students actually, you know, followed the trail to my current job at the youth center that we both work at. Well, we work out of the same building, but it's been a lot better since I made that move. And after I had left the missionary group, that was, I think, the hardest point, because that was like, you know, one after another, like just like woof. I started to think like, you know, what is it about like the church that like, you know, there's such toxicity that like, you know, circulates around it. And I realized that I think the way that I was going about it wrong was I was putting my faith in people.
And not the religion that backs the people.
Exactly. Because people can get it wrong. People often do get it wrong.
You got to remember, those people are also the ones that oftentimes make the religion. Mm-hmm. Like the guy who started the Mormon faith. Part of the reason that it started off polygamy, or as a polygamous sect, was because he wanted second, third wives, one of which was 14 years old when he married and impregnated her.
That's not great.
He was in his late 40s. Just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, that's not great.
No, I don't. If you're Mormon, you believe what you believe.
Yeah.
But
that instance of like 14 and pregnant though is not great. No, I think a vast majority I agree with that.
Well, I mean, Mary was about that age.
That is true.
If you're talking about Christianity.
I think that's different though from being, you know, married off And
Well, she
then-
was getting married. She just was pregnant before she actually got married.
That's
She
true.
was going to get married at 14.
That's true. And that was a cultural thing.
Yeah, see, and that's my whole point is be careful about which religion, and as Jake pointed out, be careful of the people within the religion.
Mm-hmm.
I thoroughly believe that stopping and thinking, no matter what faith that you're in, whether you're in a faith or not, can never be a bad thing. Because I know you stop and you think, and you're still a man of faith.
Oh, yeah.
So
Definitely.
it's not that I'm calling all religion bad. It's just if you stop and you deconstruct it, think, would I want my child to be in that situation?
Mm-hmm.
Would I want look at a baby, think about any future children that you may or may not want to have,
Mm-hmm.
and think, would you want them to deal with what you are currently dealing with?
Oh, no, 100% not.
Exactly.
I think if my
That's-
child were ever to come home and tell me about all the things that I was engaging in, like in the church, like, oh my God, I just got home from like an 8-hour day. Did you get paid? No.
That's how
Stop.
you know it's a flag.
Yeah.
That's how you know it's a red flag.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with questioning it. And that's how you see a lot of people who come out of cults that aren't religion, that are cults.
Mm-hmm.
They come out for that type of thought process, and I'm sure their mental health is a lot better for it.
Mm-hmm.
Or people that jump from one religion to a different religion because they realized they were in a religion that was fairly toxic. You see that a lot more in LGBT youth. They grow up in one church and they switch to a different denomination that's not like, hey, I deserve nothing because I don't like the genitalia you think I should like.
It's an interesting point.
I mean, okay, you see it a lot. Like,
Yeah.
and then most religions slowly change with the times. Like the Catholic Church is now okay with gay people.
Mm-hmm.
Mormonism's now okay with black people. Because remember, there are a lot, not just Mormons, but there are a couple different sects that believe that your skin color is determined by if you were the child of Cain or Abel, and that was God's curse to Cain, was the color of the skin because of how vague it was. That, again, neither here nor there. If your religion's making you feel bad about yourself, first see if you're a serial killer, a child predator, a family annihilator. And if you're none of those things, then maybe your religion's the problem. Okay, there are certain things that make you a bad person.
Yeah.
But not all religions agree that those are the bad things.
That's fair.
And I know a big part of religion that like keeps people holding on is something that you keep bringing up is the community of it and the fear of no longer having that community.
Yeah, community is a really big portion of that, I think. And it can be particularly scary when you're growing up in that sort of an environment and then faced with those hard like questions, the questions that you ask that could potentially lead you away from it, and the fear of losing that community. Each time that I had to move on, I was afraid of losing that community. First at the Church of Foxiness, and then second with this group of missionaries, because it wasn't exactly a community of peers, but it was a community of students that I had grown fond of. And like, you know, we cultivated a relationship through that mentor-mentee sort of like situation. And it was each time the thing that was difficult about moving on was the fear of losing that community.
But the great thing from your story that everybody can take away is you can find new communities.
That's exactly
They
right.
can be of the same faith, they can be of a different faith, they can be of no faith at all. But if the thing that's holding you back from leaving a toxic situation is the community, be rest assured that you can find community elsewhere.
Yeah. It is, in fact, much easier than you might be thinking that it is. It didn't take long to like find new community outside of like the other two instances. It was as simple as just getting connected to similar thinking people, which in my case happened to be like my former coworkers and then now current employers.
Yeah.
And things are a lot healthier now, and we all share a similar faith, and so it is very good. But even outside of that, I established community through Kiraheim Foam Fighting Group, and it's been great. the thing I think I wanted to touch on, aside from community, was it's okay to ask those questions, because in questioning the things that you believe, you can reaffirm the things that you believe. Like,
I'm glad that you said it, not me, because it's a bad thing for an atheist to tell a religious person to question things.
No, okay, so yeah, I understand. Like, certainly you should make sure what you are believing is what you believe, and you do that through questioning. I found that in asking those big questions of, like, why is this like why is this a continuously happening thing everywhere that I go that have these traits? It's because they weren't exhibiting the qualities that I believed were, of, I don't want to phrase this in like Christianese, because there's a way to say this, but I want to say this in like as much of a
non-religious way,
right? Yeah,
not non-religious, but like
a secular way. Like it branches the gap. Like there's basically, like, through questioning all these things, I learned a set of morals and like core values that I wanted to see in a body, in like a congregation or a church, that would make me feel comfortable. And what that looked like was one that was service oriented, one where many people were wanting to step up into serving or leadership roles, one where a leadership was also serving. Not just that they were divvying out jobs, but like it was important to me to see a head pastor that was like in the trenches with their fellow congregation members. Not someone who would just stand and like bark orders or like, these are the things that we need to get done, but someone who would actually pick up a shovel and dig the hole with you. That was like important to me. Because that, like I had said in our previous podcast, that was indicative of what I think the leadership that Jesus demonstrated looked like, was one that was service oriented. Leaders should be just as servant like as the people that they are entrusted with guiding.
I see.
Yeah.
So take it from a theist. Okay, we talked about this earlier. Technically, I'm agnostic, but people will recognize the word atheist over agnostic. So take it from somebody who's a theist, who believes in their Bible, that there's nothing wrong with questioning. And I think that could save a lot of people from, in like situations like yours, and situations that are even more intensely traumatic, and situations that are on the verge to get traumatic, that if you question and if you think about it more, you could save yourself and ideally the people around you from heartache. Because it's the belief that if you question too much, you'll lose everything, that you must not actually believe if you're questioning.
Right.
And I think that gets dangerous, because the whole reason I lost my quote unquote lost my faith to even is a weird thing to say, because I am like one of the most spiritual people I know. Not hippy dippy, I pray to rocks spiritual, but I believe that there is more out there. It was because I was so certain in the religion that I grew up in that I was going to find 100% way to prove it. And I believe so harshly that I learned new languages. I read books of cultures that I didn't even know existed. I went to at least 60, 70 churches and a Wiccan ceremony, which was very enlightening.
Oh boy.
But that doesn't make me a bad person. Me not believing doesn't make me a bad person. You, Jake, believing doesn't make you a bad person. And I encounter this a lot with people who are deconstructing cults and people who are trying to uphold a religion, that doing this or that makes you a bad person. I think there's very few things in the world that actually make you a bad person. Thinking about and discussing religion is not one of them.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's 100% right.
Yeah, there's such a big stigma around it. So hopefully these couple episodes helped break that stigma at least a little bit. Oh, and we're showing that people of different beliefs can be friends, because I consider you one of my closest friends.
I also consider you a close friend.
Yay!
If I didn't, I don't think I would share something as like sacred to me as like Kiraheim with you.
Oh.
Yeah.
And now I feel special. No. If you listen back to episode number 1, you said that anybody that spent more than 5 minutes with you would have heard about.
That's not true. I said, okay.
You said
5 minutes they would hear about it from me. I will continue to like talk about Kiraheim and how awesome it is and all that business. But it takes a level of trust in a relationship that I have with anyone to invite people out to Kiraheim.
Well, thank you. That makes me very special because you did that after our first conversation where I said hi. And I started questioning you about your religion.
You did. But I also wasn't dissuaded by that. And it was through that conversation we really got to know each other. And so I think, by the end of that, I would have had a good feel for like what kind of a person you are and just been like, hey, so like you mentioned that in college you did this thing. I'm currently doing this thing. Do you want to join my guild? And then not only that, but you brought people too, which was cool.
Yeah, people are accidentally learning a lot more about our friendship behind the scenes.
Yeah. But I mean, I feel like that's also pretty great because like this is just furthering like, you know, the whole like a theist and an atheist like can be like complete friends, like having different opinions, but still enjoying like equally nerdy things and like...
And even occasionally discuss religion and not yell at each other, not call each other names, not be condescending. All right. I hope I didn't... Sometimes I come off as condescending. I think that's just my personality.
No. You just did a lot of research and it shows.
Thank you.
I have not like really branched out. I think the only like branching out from like true Christianity is like, you know, or not true Christianity was the Christian paganism was like.
I have a copy of the Hindi if you want it.
I might.
Okay, I'll
I don't do a whole lot of reading right now because where do I have the time? But like if I could find it on Audible, actually, I'll probably do that.
I think it comes with the CD-ROM.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Hindi is a almost like an anthology. It brings together different clips from a bunch of different religious texts. Kind of like if you're reading, I hate to compare it, but if you're reading like a condensed mythology book, it's kind of like that.
Interesting.
But my favorite religious book to read is honestly the Book of Mormon because that reads like fan fiction. Again, I don't mean to shit on Mormonism.
Yeah.
I really don't. But, dude, like, it's wild. Native Americans are actually a tribe of Israel. And so, like,
oh boy.
They're not actually, okay, they're, like, it's a fact that Native Americans are not Jewish. Anybody who tells you otherwise because of their religion, I'm sorry.
Also, how did the Native Americans go from, like, you know, Israel to here?
Okay. And that's why I mean, like, the Book of Mormon, it's just, reading it's just wild.
Right.
It was a wild read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it as just a book, a story to read. It wasn't as dry as certain other books that I've read on the topic of religion. Although not as wild as like the Book of Revelation, because that is truly some like I am on acid.
Yeah.
I'm kind of enjoying it.
Yeah.
Righteous fury, Old Testament God and all that. I don't think I have my copy of the Upanishads anymore, but I definitely do have my Hindi that I will bequeath to you.
Oh, thank you.
I also have, oh my god, I hate to say it. My sister gave it to me. I have Joel Osteen's books of the 7 Secrets to Life.
Oh my god.
You would like to read it?
I want to know what he thinks the 7 Secrets to Life are.
One of them is making your bed.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Making your bed?
Yes.
Is that like the establishing like daily habits and stuff? Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually, I could see the merit in that.
Okay, so I don't ever shit on anything until I either learn about it or experience it. That's my philosophy to life is you can't shit on something you don't know shit about.
Yeah.
So when my sister said that she got a lot out of it, she's an avid Joel Osteen, she used to be at least an avid watcher of televangelists. And she said she had the book and that she was going to get rid of it. And I love books. And so no matter what the book is, I don't want it to get burned because we can always learn from the past. No matter how awful the book is, we can learn from it.
Yeah.
Even if it's just like, this you say is the way to live, I will use it as the way not to live. So I read it. It wasn't as bad as you would think it was.
Really?
I think he had a ghostwriter. I have no proof of that.
Oh, probably.
I have no proof of that whatsoever. But I think. So if you would like to have that too, I
would very much like to check that out.
Yeah, and when you're done with it, I have a couple other people who said that they might be interested, so don't necessarily burn it.
Oh, well, okay.
And definitely don't burn my Hindi book, because that one's another nice one, but you can keep the Hindi one.
Okay.
Right. And then to our listeners, I guess I will give, it's been a while since I've given advice first.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to steal your advice. It's taking me a second.
Okay.
Because my advice is usually question everything. And All right, so my advice will be, you're not as smart as you think you are. And that's okay, because you can always learn. And religion isn't the end all be all. There's more to you than that. And it's okay if you're hurting. Just find a different community. All right, your turn. Your advice.
My takeaway would be it is okay to ask questions. In fact, you should, because that can steer you away from something very hurtful, or it can bolster something that you truly believe in. And either way, it's only going to lead to growth. So do not be afraid. Much as like the angels often say, do not be afraid. But you should ask the questions for sure.
Yeah. Oh, and quick note to psychology today. F you. Atheists aren't going to make people's mental health worse. What the hell?
Yeah.
What the actual hell? Goodbye, guys. We'll see you next week.
See ya. Join the conversation. Find us on social media at It's Working Podcast or link below.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you join us next week.
Be kind to yourself and to others.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show. Oh, you know, I try to find a purpose in my life to drive me, to guide me. Oh, doctor, I feel dead inside.
Do you shudder internally when you witness a Karen going off on some innocent service industry worker?
Do you consume bad fan fiction and or have tattoos from your favorite TV shows?
Do you strain to listen in on the awkward date stories of strangers?
Is your family the worst and you just don't want to feel alone?
Then we might have the podcast for you. Cringe With Me, the podcast where we dig up the cringiest articles, questions, and tidbits of human culture to review with you, our listeners, so you can cringe with me.
Look up Cringe With Me on your favorite podcast directory.